It seems that time has come at long last that I can finally stop repeating the words, "just play Rune Factory," for a brief stint in order to tell you why you ought to be playing Rune Factory. Before we begin, I'll just take the moment to explain that Rune Factory is split up into two main segments, the proper numbered titles and the side story games, those being Frontier, Tides of Destiny, and now Guardians of Azuma to add to that list. They're all in continuity with one another and share the same world and approximate time frame of events. But some mechanics do vary, especially depending on installment, such as if you're in the side series of games, which tend to be less farming focused and more adventure oriented. That little prologue out of the way, let's get started. Greetings everyone, this is the Hipster Snek, and today we're returning to the world of Rune Factory with its latest installment, that being Guardians of Azuma. At long last, after almost 20 years of teasing us with background lore about some remote island nation in the distant east, which is definitely totally not Japan, you guys, but it's definitely Japan, we finally have a game set in said distant eastern nation, by the name of Azuma. The game released this very year even, in June of 2025. This is one of those rare instances where I can actually say I'm pretty up to date with this one. It came out on the Nintendo Switch and Steam, so the only platforms worth mentioning. I would have covered this one even sooner, but I felt the need to clear the entire story campaign first. So hey, let's touch on that story. We start with two dragon-riding warriors clashing fiercely in the sky, immediately cementing the game's action RPG focus. A boy and a girl who also conveniently double as our character selections for our time spent in the game. The warrior chosen then takes a premature skydiving lesson in the wake of the clash, waking up after a conveniently placed local shrine's roof broke their sudden fall. The locals, citing a lack of anything better to do with this newfound amnesiac, set them up in the shrine as their temporary housing arrangement, and by temporary I mean the rest of the game. Not long later, the Black Dragon soars by the village, spreading a horrible infectious blight, which sucks the runes, or the energy of the earth, straight out of the land. The hero bands together with the locals to fight it off, and in so doing reawaken the sleeping goddess of spring, Ulalaka, and get the idea of reawakening the local deities of Azuma in order to mount their counteroffensive against the rogue Black Dragon. We then meet a sassy flying woolly calling itself Mokoshiro and descendant of an ancient dragon god. We immediately disregard all of his dignity and start calling him Woolby instead. He agrees to help after we bribe him with enough of the local treats, and thus the game begins. To begin with, the game looks great. It took the 3D world designs from Rune Factory 5 and improved on them in every conceivable way. And mind you, I liked Rune Factory 5's world design. Seriously, when you get to the overworld for the first time, drink it in. It's glorious, and it's absolutely worth gushing over. The camera is a much better team player this go-around, though it does have its quirky moments, and the character designs are all top-notch. All of them have tons of personality, and some are wonderful callbacks to previous installments of the series, like the now fully grown Hina, who was just a tiny tot in Rune Factory 5, and Maro de Saint Coquille, member of the omnipresent de Saint Coquille family, and many others. Since I know it's popular to ask, I do, in fact, have a waifu, and it's Ulalaka. I zeroed in on her the moment she appeared on screen, and frankly, even after meeting every other character in the game, I don't regret my choice. I have a type. Don't judge me. But I'm sure anyone would find a character they adore in the course of the story and getting to know each. I was shocked at how deep several character stories went, and it's testament to the game that I was so invested in so many of the cast. And sound-wise, the game is fantastic. The adventure field music is some of my favorite, and I found myself bobbing along with the serene village melodies as well. The combat sound effects are also excellent, really lending the sense of impact and ferocity in each fight. Amazing stuff. The voice cast is bringing an excellent game this go-around as well. But I do need to address the very talkative elephant in the room, because I know I'll get inundated if I don't bring it up at least a little bit. When the game is brand new, prior to a certain patch, the NPCs, including Woolby, who never leaves the party, well, they just don't stop talking. Like, ever. I know I whined about this in Dragon's Dogma as well, but holy moly my party likes to talk. Now, there is a toggle for this in the options, where it can be adjusted how often it happens, or you can even turn it off completely if you'd rather. The game draws your attention to this upon starting a new file. On top of that, a post-launch patch also dials it back as well just by default. So I don't really consider it a legitimate complaint, not really. I'm also one of those weirdos where repeated and redundant noises don't bother me too much. Plus I genuinely liked the voice cast in the game, so I really didn't mind. The cutscenes are great, I loved listening, and it was all very engaging. Excellent sound work. So, let's get into the game mechanics, and I'll try to explain a little bit how you'll need to adjust your expectations in the event you're already a fan of the franchise. This requires a little explanation, so bear with me. Rune Factory is, in fact, a spin-off game from the Farm Story series of games, which normies will know as Harvest Moon, and true fans will understand that it actually progressed past the Super Nintendo and became Story of Seasons. Yes, I am, in fact, calling you Stardew types out. You know who you are. Rune Factory is that, but way better and 8 times over already. You own a farm, and you do farm stuff with it, without needing to get dirt under your fingernails or actually use your muscles. However, Guardians of Azuma elected to go one step further. You literally control entire towns. And I don't mean the print system from Rune Factories 4 and 5. That's not even in the game. I mean, you get to place shops, buildings, farm plots, roads, decorations, and more in all the towns that you visit because you literally just own them. Yes, instead of using a hoe to till the soil, you'll create farm plots with Woolby's help and collectible resources and, get this, you have a farming omni-tool in the form of a divine hoe. It places farm plots, waters them, collects them, and more, and you don't even need to keep swapping tools to do it. This makes farming very fast and incredibly intuitive. You'll also eventually get the divine tools of the regional gods as you rescue them from their often self-imposed dilemmas, which will expedite it even further. Like an umbrella that can water your entire field in like 4 swings, or banging Ulalaka's bongos to make your radishes huge. Not a euphemism, surprisingly enough. It feels like living out a farming RPG dating sim experience, except that you're the main character of one of those wuxia action films where the main character gets inexplicable divine might because, well, he's the main character. And that, my friends, is awesome. This translates neatly into the A portion of this ARPG. Combat is excellent. Weapon types are more limited this go-around in return for being more meaningfully different. This time, you can pick a single-handed katana, the Zweihander for Western blades, dual blades for maximum blender, and the new arrival of bows and arrows, and talismans which replace staves for their elemental magical damage. One step further, the game allows your main character to have a main and sub-weapon approach, so you can customize to each situation as you see fit. And, get this, there is a full-on party system at long last. It's not just inviting NPCs that you like or bringing monsters from your barn each day to explore. No, you can make a preset party with any NPCs you've put a singular friendship point into. That will take all of like 3 conversations anyway. You can also pick from any tamed monsters that you happen to have on hand. Also, taming monsters is no longer an enormous pain in the butt and mandates huge swaths of maintenance anymore, which is very cool. And just because my entire NPC party is made up of nothing but women doesn't mean anything, obviously. All characters apart from the main character get just a main weapon in addition to the regular 3 pieces of gear: helmet, body, and accessory. And this game has a fashion mode. Any equipment you put on can be used as a glamour option. Hence my Matsuri put on this very stylish samurai straw hat and wore it the entire game in my personal playthrough. This allows for very in-depth customization without taking hours upon hours to get it where you want it. And the skill system was completely overhauled. Now, by doing certain actions, like say using Zweihanders for example, gets you XP in that respective skill tree. In this example's case, obviously it's Zweihanders. And you power them up manually from a simple, straightforward skill trees, none of which are very large. I swapped weapons around very regularly and maxed out several of them with minimal efforts before the story was over. It's an interesting trade, and that leads us nicely into how rune points work in this installment. Everyone knows Rune Factory has rune points, that being the energy which limits certain actions. But in this game, they only limit usage of the divine tools. Normal weapons, combat forging, crafting, carrying entire buildings over your head are 100% free to do. I was legit blown away when I learned this. But this does come with a double-edged sword, and that is the fact that the game tries to make gold actually a thing that you want to have, rather than something you use in the early game to get started and then abandon to never use again. To craft weapons, armor, and said buildings and decorations, you need to go to the store and pay with both the materials and some fee in gold. And while there are skill trees for crafting and forging, which doesn't make sense since you're not the one doing them, you're never allowed to just do it yourself. And, as ruler over what amounts to 4 completely different towns, you are also in charge of building the shops and hiring employees to station them. As they tell you straight up, your purse is the town's purse. Yes, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma takes place in some weird anarcho-capitalist commune monarchy. I don't really understand it either. But here's one little pro tip from yours truly to all of you. Farmers are completely pointless. They suck, and I hate them. Never pay them for this completely worthless task. They're slow, they're inefficient, they do completely illogical and irrational things with your seed stores, and they're always in the way. At least if they're miners, loggers, or fishers, they're bringing home something useful, even when they're terrible at their job. Also, feel free to fire them. These are NPCs with no names, faces, or legitimate backstories, so you don't have to feel bad about it. When a villager joins a town, they'll have randomized traits. Some of these are terrible, such as Big Eater, which makes them more expensive, Lazy, which makes them less efficient, etc., etc. So fire them! Don't even blink. You're the God Monarch, and well within your right. Trust me, there will be more. There are always more NPCs ready to take their spot. Fun fact about my personal playthrough, I actually deliberately limited how many houses I was willing to build in each town to keep the NPC population down so I wouldn't have to keep paying their wages. Yes, that sounds completely sociopathic, and it kind of is, but it was sort of necessary too, because these NPCs will just keep coming if you keep building housing for them. Thing is, there's 4 towns. This stacks up, and it stacks up fast. The only town routinely paying for all of its own expenses will be Summer Village because it's set up to be like 99% shops. And if you man every stall with even decently passable NPC help, you'll finally turn a profit to justify literally everything else, including your layabout farmers. I respect the hustle. They're trying to make you actually budget and not take any shortcuts, because in a lot of ways the game gives you tons of them compared to past installments. But honestly, not being able to make my own stuff was a bit of a downgrade. Oh, speaking of upgrades, yeah, that wasn't my best transition, roll with it. Upgrading weapons hits law of diminishing return lightning fast. In the early game, pumping 2 to 3 levels in a weapon will basically double its actual damage output, but it will basically plateau in terms of any additional potential. By endgame, I was swapping up weapons so rapidly that upgrading became a money sink. Even things like Matsuri's unique sword wasn't worth upgrading much at all. Spending is better than mending in this case. Also marvelous, if you're listening and speak English, why is Zaza not a bachelorette? Why do you mock me? Anyway, that said, I can go into every nuance and detail that separates this game from the others, but this video would be 3 hours long. So, one last point before I proceed to my final thoughts. The metagame is decorations. I'm not joking. Decorations have stats tied to them, and most of them can be set 4 times over, once in each village. This includes things with absolutely absurd stats when taken into consideration, let alone when multiplied 4 times over. Build every decoration that has stats tied to it, and place it in every village where it's applicable. You will not regret this decision. With that, let's move on. Should you get Rune Factory Guardian? Yes. Why are you even asking at this point? Have I not polished this game enough for you? In almost 3 pages of solid text, I can think of 2 things to gripe about. Farmers who aren't the player character, and maybe the NPCs talk a little too much, maybe, if that. If you don't have it in your Steam cart by now, I have to assume you're not on your PC at the moment. Maybe you're watching on your phone or something? But seriously, this is the first game since Rune Factory 4 to rival, well, Rune Factory 4. I will say, having completed the story campaign, that a lot of the game is getting invested in these characters, and the game has a strong cast to its name. The campaign itself is absolutely worth doing on top of all of that. There's even a DLC that adds additional romance plotlines for 2 additional characters, and since most Rune Factory DLC is usually just useless cosmetics, that is saying something. It's an amazing action RPG with incredible fighting, incredible farming, and incredible world building. I don't know what more you need. If Rune Factory 5 was a matter of we turn out a pretty decent game or we die, then Guardians of Azuma is we ball now energy personified. You owe it to yourself, if you have any love at all for ARPGs, farm sims, dating sims, or any other hybridizations, to get Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. What are you waiting for? Go buy it right now! Anyway, this has been the Snek, bringing today a shockingly up-to-the-minute review for your consideration. What did you think? Did you know of Rune Factory before now? If not, how have you been on my channel for any length of time? Do tell, I'd like to know. Be sure you do that like, comment, subscribe combo if you haven't already. It helps me out a great deal. And thank you for watching to the end. I don't always stick to my schedule for these scripted reviews, but I do my best for you guys. You make it worth it. Anyway, join me here each week for reviews, Let's Plays, First Impressions, and the Tomodachi Bros podcast, all right here. And I will see you there.